In the Lab, a Texans podcast that takes a different look at things. Drew Doherty and John Harris have their lab coats and goggles on, and the Bunsen burners burning. Here's Drew.
Hey there, welcome into In the Lab. Drew Doherty from my house here in Spring Branch. John Harris, look at you, fancy. You're there in the studios across from the locker room at NRG Stadium. I'm guessing it feels pretty darn good to be back in the building because I know you were not there for quite some time. I've had the opportunity to go back for a couple hours each of the last few Wednesdays because we've been taping Texans 360, but it's kind of nice to be back, isn't it?
Well, I was doing the math on this, Drew, and the week that we were all basically sent home, we had gone down to Galveston because the week before, Mark was on vacation. You and I knocked out radio all week. I did radio from 6 to 10 in the morning with Seth that week, and it was just I don't want to say a nightmare of a week, but it was just a long week. And so I just remember getting near the end of it and going, oh, okay, now I get my break. And then, of course, everything hit. And that was, I think, March 13th. I'm pretty sure.
It's almost 2 months. Or 3 months.
Almost 3 months.
Yeah.
To the day. And is just walking down the hallways. And, of course, it's quiet. There's really not a whole lot of people here, people doing some construction on different things. And so I just walked in the studio and I was like, whoa. It's weird because it's like it's been a while, but yet you walk right in and go, okay, I noticed everything. Mark's pile of stuff over there that he just leaves there. There is a bunch of, hand sanitizer.
That's courtesy of me, man. They dumped it right outside the door, and so I picked it up and sort of moved it around. And I wiped the surfaces down real clean last Wednesday.
Thank God, because that's I'm realizing that I am a germaphobe. I'm pretty sure that I am at some point. So but it's good to be back. I hope this can end up being permanent in some ways. Those just listening, I just did the air quotes thing. So hopefully that's going to happen here soon, but we'll see. But it's just good to be back in the building. And hopefully we can get everybody back here. Mainly, as we've said numerous times here in the lab, let's just get everybody healthy, man. Let's get everybody healthy. Let's defeat this thing as best we possibly can. And hopefully along the way we can play a little bit of football and bring everybody's spirits up and do that kind of thing. So that's kind of obviously the goal, and we'll go from there. But on In the Lab, we just fire away, man, just like we've been doing throughout the pandemic and like we'll continue to do beyond it.
Yes, and for those of you watching this in the lab on YouTube, you saw me fiddling with my shirt. Started this off. I didn't have my lav microphone on, my lavalier microphone on. So that's some of the fun you get when you do internet TV. All right, you mentioned some of those changes. There's new stuff in the building to sanitize things. There have been new positions on the staff created just because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Those are some of the few changes. But there's one massive change that's happened that, in the grand scheme of things, it's probably not the biggest deal, but it's been a big deal ever since Bill O'Brien took over in early January of 2014. And he has every single training camp since that taking that job, he's had the Texans practice somewhere else against another NFL team. And in many instances, in multiple years, he's had them practice away, and he's had them practice at home against another NFL team. So a lot of times they went against two different squads before the season started practice-wise. That's not going to be the case this year. About a week or so ago, the NFL sent out a memo to all the teams, and one of the many changes is you're practicing at your home facility. You're not going away to training camp. So there will be no Greenbrier training camps. There will be no Steelers headed to Latrobe, Pennsylvania. The Chicago Bears not going down to Bourbonnais, Illinois. Everybody's doing it at their facilities, and nobody gets to practice against another team. So think about it. First year he was here, he had the Texans go to Denver and practice against Peyton Manning and the Broncos. He wanted his young quarterbacks to see how Manning prepared, how he got ready, and he thought that could rub off. And one of the other benefits was your scouting department could get a look at some of those fringe guys that might get cut when the 90 gets trimmed down to 53, or back then from the 90 to 75 and then to 75 to 53. Right. So it gave you a chance to maybe pick up some guys, and we saw the Texans over the years add players via free agency when that happens. So that will not be the case. Texans going to only get to see another team when the preseason schedule begins. So it's a multifaceted thing. How much are we going to see these guys practice? How much are we going to see the Texans starters play in the preseason? Does this affect any of that? Because he would get assured 75 reps if he wanted for his starters in the practices, and it was controlled, whereas the games, he'd kind of hold them out. I don't know how much that changes things, but certainly it's going to alter what we see this August once the Texans take the preseason schedule going.
Part of my favorite part of training camp were the joint practices.
Yeah.
I loved them. You could be out on a field, like you said, in 2014, it was Matt Ryan came here. Just thinking quarterbacks. Matt Ryan came here. We saw Peyton Manning on the road. In 2015, we saw Kirk Cousins and RG3 up in Washington in the rain. Remember Jonathan
Richmond,
Joseph's
Virginia,
famous, let's get the bleep out of Richmond sort of
some
thing.
good fights too, man.
Yeah.
That was a fun trip for you and me.
That was a really fun trip. 2016, we went out to San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw the San Francisco 49ers. 2017, when we were up at the Greenbrier, we saw the New England Patriots came up to the Greenbrier.
Yeah. We saw the Saints later that month.
That's right.
Before the hurricane came in New Orleans, in Metairie.
2017, yeah. Boy, that was jam-packed. I mean, to be able to practice with Matt Ryan, Peyton Manning,
Drew Brees, Tom
Brady.
Matt Stafford last
2018, year. Matt Stafford last year. I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers. I mean, they've had a chance to practice against some pretty impressive quarterbacks, and I think all told it's really helped, I think. So it's going to be interesting how you go about and how Coach O'Brien goes about getting them ready, because now you're not going to see a different color uniform until you do get to the preseason. Now, it's going to be the same for everybody, which I don't know that's good, bad, or otherwise. You look at it how you want, but it's the same for everybody. The only person I've ever seen not like joint practices was Aaron Rodgers last year, which was sort of interesting when he made his comments about how he didn't like it. Everybody else I've ever heard of loves them. And I think a lot of the frontline guys, your starters and such, your stars, they don't play any preseason games. So I think, to me, it was kind of odd hearing Aaron Rodgers say that, because I thought, man, you're not going to play in preseason games. So, get it done in these practices where it's controlled, especially quarterbacks. You're not going to get hit. And you can say all you want about, quarterbacks really, they got to get hit and get to feel like they're playing. No, they don't. Not really. They want to stay healthy, especially in preseason. They couldn't care less if they get hit. So control it. Thudding up in practice. Mark brought up a really great point the other night, and he said preseason games probably need to go the way of the Pro Bowl. And in the Pro Bowl, basically, it came down to thud anyways. You weren't really tackling anybody. You were kind of thudding up, which basically means you tackle without taking a guy to the ground. So you're not low tackling. You're not doing things that you would normally do in regular season or playoffs. So I think that's not a bad idea. I don't know if that'll be in play this year. This preseason is really sort of kind of a dog head turn. Like, okay, I don't really know what we're going to see here, so let's just kind of roll with it. But I do think we'll probably see the frontline starters, the frontline guys, a little bit more than we would, because I think those joint practices. Think about the number of reps. I'm trying to remember what the number of reps was, but I want to say we were out in San Francisco, and I remember talking to OB afterwards, and I was just kind of asking him about the process of going against San Francisco. And he said, you realize that we ran 200 reps all day? And he's like, at that time, Brock's the quarterback. He's like, Brock got I can't remember what he said, like 125 reps or something of that magnitude. And I was like, whoa. I mean, just 125 reps, that's 2 games. That's 2 games worth of reps, whether it's one-on-ones or whatever. And I told Mark, I said, look, if you really wanted to take the preseason and get some value out of it, and also for the fans too, take the joint practice and move it to the bowl, charge a little less for those particular tickets, and probably you may not even need to do that, because in a joint practice situation, there's so much that you can see. It's not just up and down the field and all that. In a preseason game, you're not going to see your frontline starters anyways. But if you go to a joint practice situation, you start off with inside drill, 7-on-7. On the other side of the field, they're doing, one-on-ones, wide receivers, DBs, while you're doing inside drill. You're doing O-line, D-line, one-on-ones, while they're doing, running backs, linebackers going one-on-one in pass game. Like, there's so much there's more happening in a joint practice than there's going to happen in a preseason game.
And you're assured in a joint practice, like we said, of getting those reps. You just threw out the number 125. That's over the course of 2 days, those practices that they had with the 49ers.
Right.
75 was basically the number per day that you could know that Deshaun Watson's going to see 75 reps. On defense, J.J. Watt's going to see 75 reps. Now, give or take a little bit each time, obviously. But like you just mentioned, that those guys are going to see it. Whereas in a game, I remember in 2011, first pass of the 2011 game preseason-wise at San Francisco, Matt Schaub throws a pick six. Now, this is 2011. I'm not talking about the 13 regular season. He throws a pick six, and so the offense, the first team, gets off the field. Now, the Texans would wind up winning that game pretty easily, that preseason game. But, hey, if that's Bill O'Brien coaching, that might be about it for that first-team offense, or he might have to trot him back out the next series when really he probably only wanted to get him one series and about 10 plays, which is what we saw last year when Deshaun Watson played against the Lions. He came into the game. You hadn't seen him the first game. And he went boom, 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 boom down the field, touchdown, found DeAndre Hopkins, and they were done for the night. Let's see them, or let's get going. They look good. So these practices were very, very valuable, and it's fun because last week I was on a Zoom call with our producer for the preseason TV broadcast, Dave Keeney, as well as the play-by-play voice, Kevin Kugler, and Spencer Tillman, the color commentator. I'm down on the sidelines. And we're trying to figure out, how are we going to do this? We, don't know if we're all going to be able to go to road games, if we're going to be able to go to home games, how it's going to line up. But we were talking about this. Like, this probably makes these preseason games much, much more important this year, or we might see Bill O'Brien just kind of do what he's done in the past, keep these guys sheltered from injury, sheltered from opportunities to get injured, and you might not see the key guys like Watson, and a few others be out there. It's going to be fascinating to see either way, but there's a lot to be gained from these practices, as we've seen over the years. And like you said, I love going to another place and just seeing how they run things and how their setup is, because every place is different. Every place is fascinating. And thankfully, aside from going to New Orleans, all these places have been cooler temperatures. So I'm going to miss that because, golly, it's nice to get out of Houston in August just for a few days.
Yeah, the New Orleans one is, it's interesting because the New Orleans one, I don't want to say it's one that shouldn't be forgotten. I don't forget the game. I sometimes forget that we did practice there. But it was brutally sticky. Oh my God. It was
one of the days. And then the next day when, I don't know, I can't remember. It was different though. It wasn't the same in 17.
Yeah.
But it was, when I remember going back in 2010 when it was Houston. But in 17, the hurricane had messed things up temperature-wise, so it was just sort of weird.
Yeah.
Like the birds were chirping differently and all that stuff. Yeah, that was because of the low pressure. But anyways, this is because meteorological.
You could do a 30 for 30 just on that preseason.
Yeah.
Alone, starting at the Greenbrier, having the Patriots come up there, then us coming back and then going to New Orleans, then having having Harvey, and then and then starting the season. I mean that whole season, my God, the Astros are then winning the World Series that year.
Yeah,
you could do a 30 for 30 just on that alone. It was just oh man, what an amazing time. But those joint practices, I love going to a different facility to see, like you said, how they do it. I love seeing different teams, the fans, kind of hearing from their fans. And then their fans wanting to see what we've got. Oh, they want to see this particular player. Oh, they want to see Deshaun. So I always like going there. But it'll be interesting to see how coaches go about this preseason. And are they going to go back to, in some sense, what kind of be the old school model, which was take your starters, first game, give them a series, second game, give them a couple series, third game, maybe give them a half, fourth game, nobody plays, you get ready for the opener. And it's going to be a little different for the Texans because they'll play not 10 days after preseason game 4. They'll play 7 days playing that game on Thursday. So that's going to be a little different. But, you know, I was kind of talking to some people here. I did my interview, with TexAgs earlier today, Drew, and it was just like people sort of ask, what do you expect? Or what do you think? You're like,
yeah, I have no idea.
We've never done this.
We're supposed to start on time, but who knows, man? Who knows?
We've never done this during a pandemic.
Yeah.
So we don't know. And I think it's kind of fascinating, but it is, and I think it's really kind of made for some fun discussion to talk about, well, what could be different? What can you do differently? Well, with a preseason game, say, do a joint practice for a preseason game. I think the fans would get so much more out of that because they would see the players they want to see. They want to see Deshaun. They want to see JJ. They want to see Zach Cunningham. They want to see these guys. So do it that way. And then that way you control it. Coaches are on the field. The fans get to see a lot of practice. I mean, I think the fans that come to see joint practices here love them. I think they love them, especially, obviously, when the teams are not separated, when they're together competing. I think the fans love it. I love it. So
you know what else is fun about it? There's on every NFL team, there's usually at least one guy, and usually multiples, that are actually from the city of Houston.
Right.
Like last year was cool. Danny Amendola played in the Woodlands.
Yeah.
He was here. We got to talk with him. There's Glover Quinn had just retired from the Lions, started his career. He was out at practice. It's just fun seeing those type of folks because there's Earl Mitchell a couple years ago with the 49ers when they were here. So, yeah, it's always fun because of the Houston connection. It's a city so big and so talented that there's going to be a Houstonian on at least one roster usually.
Yeah. And the Texans have got a Houstonian starting this year with Ross Blacklock, so I can't wait. How about that? We got Ross Blacklock, got Gilly.
Michael Thomas.
What?
Michael Thomas.
Michael Thomas. That's right. So that's 3 representing the city of Houston. I know I'm missing somebody.
We are. We are.
I apologize.
Can't think of
to somebody I'm missing.
Yeah.
That's okay.
All right. You and I were we were texting last night because I saw one of the accounts that I follow. They tweeted out a picture of this guy in an old Oilers hat. It's from an 80s magazine article. He had the Oilers, Columbia blue hat with the cursive Houston Oilers in red. It's an awesome hat. But it was an ad for a football game that I used to play on my computer in the late 80s. And it was called NFL Challenge. And you would have loved this game. I mean, somehow you missed it, and then you countered and said, oh, I love this game, and you sent me a picture of micro league baseball. Somehow I missed that game, but we're both dorks, and we would have loved those respective games in the 80s. But it was, you would call a play, and you had about 100 plays you could choose. Yeah. And then it would go to a screen, and there'd be O's for the offense, X's for the defense, and it was true NFL rosters from 1985. Yeah. So the Bears were obviously awesome. If you wanted to run the ball, you chose the LA Rams as well because they had Eric Dickerson, and they were just chugging along. So anyways, I saw that, and we were going back and forth, but it got me thinking, what's your favorite football game, video game of all time? So I'm going to let you have the floor here, Johnny.
Okay, so I know this one really well, and I know a lot of people will say Tecmo. I did not have a Nintendo growing up. My friends had it, and so I loved Tecmo, but I didn't really get a chance to play it a lot because my parents did not get me a Nintendo. So, yeah, I'm still mad at them for that. However, when I became an adult, I'll never forget this. I had been married for probably 3 years, maybe 2.5, 3 years. So not a whole heck of a lot of time. And I happened to be walking in the Avenues Mall in Jacksonville. I walked by Electronics Boutique, and I saw this out of the corner of my eye. I saw this screenshot. It was like a poster of a football game. And I went in to go check it out. I was like, what is that? And it was called NFL Game Day. And it was for the Sony PlayStation.
So this is late 90s, late 1990s?
Yeah, late 90s. And so it was amazing. I was like, I couldn't get enough of that game. And it went, I want to say it went from the little 8-bit Tecmo Bowl figures to like 16-bit, if I remember correctly. Because the graphics I remember being really nice. Like, this is the first time that I feel like I'm actually watching football
Right.
on my screen. I love that. Well, then I got the college game day like the college version. I played that nonstop. And it was one of those things, when people play a lot of video games, they get to a point where they find a little like Easter eggs or find different things. Well, I had never been that way with a video game ever. I could never find like certain things. But I had played that college game day so much that I had found a particular play with an audible. Like I could read a coverage and go, that's man, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to audible to something else. Or if they were in zone, I would run this play. And I destroyed the computer like 144-6 one night. I would just run. I ran this one play all the way down the field. And it was from a college game. It was the best. It was phenomenal. And then they came up with a different version a couple years later. And I was pumped because they were putting former Super Bowl championship teams.
Oh, nice.
So it was like the 69 Chiefs and the AFL Jets and some others. I couldn't get to Electronics Boutique fast enough. I get the game, I bring it home, and I start playing it. And the numbers and the names are all screwed up. It's like it doesn't match the real thing.
That had to infuriate you.
I was so pissed off. Drew. I took
personality.
I went straight back to Electronics Boutique and I said, give me my money back. I don't want to see this game ever again. I was infuriated. I was so mad. I was like, how can you put this in here and then nothing is right? The quarterback for the 68 Jets was not named Joe Johnson. It was Joe Namath, and his number was 12, not 13. 13 was the wide receiver. I got so –
I'm guessing they had copyright issues they couldn't secure.
I'm sure they did, but it didn't matter to me. I was like, get out. And you couldn't – at that point, I don't think you could change the team and the names, all that kind of stuff. So that was mine. How about you?
I think it was the 1989 Christmas. Like I had just gotten a Nintendo. It had to have been for my birthday in August, not sooner, because I was in 6th grade. But I saw Tecmo Bowl, and I was like, we got to get this. And I remember the family – we usually spent Christmas with this one family every year, and they got sick. And so we knew, I think, on Christmas Eve maybe, the 23rd even, that we were going to stay home and do Christmas at home. So we went to the video store to rent It's a Wonderful Life. We're going to watch that on VHS. And I kind of meandered over to the video games, and I saw Tecmo Bowl, and I really wanted Tecmo Bowl. And I was like, hey, Mom, can we rent this? And she's like, no. And which was kind of uncharacteristic of her. And I was a dope. And I was like, why not? Well, like I was just furious. And then I wake up Christmas morning. It turns out Santa Claus brought Tecmo Bowl. I loved Tecmo Bowl.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever played the Super Tecmo version, which I think they added more teams and they added stats, which if they'd had stat taking in the first Tecmo Bowl, it would have been nirvana for me. But I loved that I could beat anybody with the Bears. I know Bo Jackson is like the best, but I guarantee you, I could probably, whoever's watching this or listening to this, if you chose the Raiders, I bet I could beat you with the Bears. They were awesome. So I love Tecmo Bowl.
I'll give you another one, Drew. I'll give you another one. When Sega Genesis came out, they had a college game based off of Madden. So they had Madden. Madden had been out for a couple of years, which is phenomenal.
Right.
But then they came out with the college version. They called it Bill Walsh College Football.
I bet that was cool, yeah.
And they didn't have the copyrights. So Notre Dame was called South Bend. Florida State was Tallahassee. But what I liked about it was the numbers, at least the numbers all were right. The quarterback for Tallahassee was number 17, Charlie Ward. The linebacker was Derek Brooks. They had all the
kind of skills and everything.
They had all the ratings right for those players. And so the one thing about it was you could play 2-on-2. So we would go to my buddy's dorm where OB lived. He was in that fraternity. So I would go over there, and my buddy from Humble, Scott Hensel, we always played together. It was the two of us, and we were always Tallahassee. And we would take on all comers. And we just destroyed people. We would sit there and play for hours. Bill Walsh College Football. And it was literally the Madden game, but done in a college version.
Yeah.
And then the next year or the year after that, they actually had a college version that had the right school. They got at least the school's names. They could use the school's names, and then they used the numbers. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I seeing that ad last night, just like, oh man, that took me back because I loved NFL Challenge. Played it on my Tandy computer.
Tandy computer.
And then I think in '89 I got a Nintendo, and I played Tecmo Bowl. And then once I got to high school, by about 92, 93, I didn't really play Nintendo all that much or any video games all that much anymore. Yeah. So I kind of missed out on Madden. I'm sure had Madden been around when I was in that video game era, I would have been on that all the time. But anyways, it's good seeing you. I'm glad you're back in the stadium. Man. I'm going to be there tomorrow. I'm going to shoot the show.
Swap spots. Yep. I'll be back home.
Should be fun. And until then, man, take care, and we'll see you again.
All right, brother. See you, man.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to know when we post new content.